Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Matchfit football podcast. I'm Darren Potts, your host, and just a reminder, give us a follow on all forms of social media on Instagram, on YouTube, and Facebook at Matchfit Football. But today's guest, it is the goalkeeper for Nashville in the MLS. It is Bryan Meredith. Bryan, welcome to the podcast.
What's going on? How are you?
Did really well. Glad to have you here. I know you're just back from training. How was training today? Tell me a little bit about Nashville and how you're going this season so far.
Training was great. Loving my time here in Nashville so far. My first season with them,
Mhm.
so hopefully it won't be my last. Training was amazing, very intense today. We have a day off tomorrow, so usually these Tuesday trainings are a little bit more high impact running and more intense trainings. And we ended it with a nice 11v11 game. So it was lovely.
Always good fun, when you end up with 11v11 and some bragging rights, I'm sure, with
Oh
the
yeah.
strikers that you're up against. Tell me a little bit, before we get into some of the mindset and the performance parts of this discussion, but tell me a little bit about your journey because you came up through the NCAA system, through college football, and then into the body of the MLS. What do you remember from your journey, or tell me some of the moments that stick out to you that are probably the most fundamental in your journey so far?
Yeah, so when I was growing up, this was before like the academy situation really started. It was like my last year was maybe when they were just starting academies. So I was coming up. I played through for PDA pretty much my whole career in New Jersey, and then playing through high school and college. Growing up and kind of, I had the dream and I recognized the dream when I was probably like 12, 13 that I wanted to play professional soccer, football. And so, most of my decisions going forward from there were, what's going to give me the best opportunity to continue playing my career. Um, so I don't think there's not like one or two individual moments where I thought, this is where I'm going to make my name for myself, or this is where I'm going to do it. To be honest, just consistency in your play. In every game that I played, I tried to play to my highest level and treated every match like it was could have been my last, or like somebody's watching a scout or a college coach, whoever it might have been. So I think the biggest thing for me was just playing to the best of my abilities every game I could.
That the key thing about professional football, and having spoken to several professionals, is the word consistency. And you used it there in terms of your match performances, and obviously that comes from your training. And you talked about the intense level of training it was today because there's a day off tomorrow and you're gearing up towards another game. In terms of that consistency, how do you stay consistent, or what do you find is the best way that you adapt so you can stay consistent?
And it's hard. My first year in the league was probably where I learned, or like started to learn, how to be consistent every single day at a professional level. And it's not easy. It's all the prep work that goes into pre-training, even the night before, what you're eating, being consistent with your diet and your nutrition. Making sure you're stretching, you're doing your activations beforehand, getting in the gym for injury prevention and just building muscle. It all encapsulates it. So it's not just one or two things that you can go out and do right before training and say, "Oh, I'm going to have a lovely day at training today because I did this one thing." It's just, consistency in your entire life, not just on the pitch, but mostly everything surrounding it.
And with that consistency and with having that dedication and that discipline, you mentioned nutrition, you mentioned, getting to the gym and injury prevention. Was that something that you developed over time with understanding your body and understanding the game and understanding let me say, the demands of the game? Or was that something that was shown to you whenever you joined, certain clubs and certain
No,
teams?
I kind of had to learn that on my own. Especially when I first came to the league, I was just, a little bit shell shocked, trying to develop the pace of play and kind of play at a higher level. Um, it's something that you learn each year and each season. I think I've added something to my, daily routine or pre-training routine that has, given me an edge to be able to perform every single day at a high level. And especially when you're getting older in your career, you pick up little knocks and bruises. It's pretty um, common. So being in the gym, making sure I'm doing all my stretches. I'm in the gym for like 45 minutes before training, just stretching that whole time, making sure my body's ready to go. And I can't, I mean, when I was young, when I first came to the league, I don't think I did any of that. And I think it definitely showed in my performances were a little bit up and down more than I wanted to. So being able to really focus and like gear that in was massive for me.
Well, obviously the stretching and then being able to, as you know, as you mentioned, understand your body and understand how to keep those performances, at a consistent level rather than the up and downness, I suppose, from when you first joined the league was key to that. Would you do
Yeah.
anything post game and post training along the similar lines, whether it be like an ice bath or massage therapy or any type of recovery in that aspect?
Yeah. Every day you get in from training, have protein shake right away,
Yeah.
get into the gym, do like cool down stretching for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then either hop in the ice bath or like a recovery boots, which
Mhm,
is like just leg compressions
mhm,
just to keep the blood flow and get new blood into the legs.
mhm. And obviously couple that alongside your nutrition and your diet as well. I maybe even word it this way, the behind the scenes of being a professional footballer, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
We look at it and we sometimes see, oh, they go train, then they go home and then they have a match and that's sort of it. But there's so much more that encompasses being a professional footballer. And when you were starting out and growing into becoming a professional footballer, whenever you wanted to do that, when you spoke to your parents, when you spoke to your family or your friends, whatever, were they supportive in that decision? Were they aware of what it would take and the discipline and dedication at the time?
Yeah, 100%. I don't think my parents, I mean, nobody's really, if you're not involved in it, you don't really know how much it takes and how much effort it takes, just not only on the field, but off the field. And so, that was a growing experience for me as I got older and as I started playing at a higher level and higher level. You kind of realize that, and you look at the people around you and you see guys who are trending downward, maybe not doing the things outside the pitch that they should be, and guys going up that are, maybe when you were younger, they weren't as good, but because of their consistency and what they were doing off the field, it helps them tremendously moving forward, especially as your body grows. You're not done growing or until 18, 19, 20. And so like if you can just stay consistent, keep your work going and not get down on yourself and just take the piss and just leave basically. It's crazy how many guys I've seen that were so much better than me just completely fall off a cliff because of the lack of dedication to the game, I think. And so many guys who have, I say, I played against this guy when I was 15. He was terrible. How is he in the league now? So there's definitely like, if I could say one thing to any of these listeners, no matter what, just keep working your butt off and being consistent. Just, you don't know how far working your butt off can take you.
That's it, isn't it? Hard work, the discipline, and the dedication. And dedication is a word that I love to use and I love to talk about. And
Yeah.
what keeps you motivated to do this every day, to turn up early, off your own bat, to do your own stretches, and then turn up to the team corporate training and then do your own stuff after? What motivates Bryan Meredith to decide to pursue excellence and elite performance every day?
To be honest, because I love it, I have fun every single day I'm in the training ground. It is just so much fun. I have a smile on my face from the moment I get there to the moment I leave. That's really it, man. Like, I don't think there's anything I could be doing right now that I'd have so much enjoyment of outside of football. And so, like, I've never had a real issue with keeping myself motivated in that sense because of how much I love it and how much joy I get out of it.
What about the competitive nature of it? The competitive nature of football as well. You're obviously competing against other teams, other players, but there's a goalkeepers union and everyone supports each other and everyone wants each other to do well. But there's also that competitiveness of, I want to be the number one. Is that a driving force for you, or was that a driving force at any point in your career?
100%. I'm a super competitive person, and so every single day, no matter what drill we're doing, I want perfection out of myself. And to be honest, keeping the people around me at a high level and keeping their spirits up is only going to drive me to become better. So I don't. It is tough when because goalkeepers, we're off to ourselves for a big portion of training.
Yeah.
And we're all competing against each other, but we're all rooting for each other as well. We're all trying to help each other out. So it's a tight balance to have, but to be honest, I'm just every single day want to prove myself that I can be better than whoever's next to me. And if his level's higher that day, then it's only going to raise my level the next day.
That's a phenomenal statement, isn't it? It's the raising of levels and leveling up and consistently leveling up and learning. And obviously, you've played at a lot of different clubs and you've played at different stages in your career at different places. You know, when you were at Seattle, you were able to win the MLS Cup, you know, the biggest prize on offer in the
Mhm.
MLS tournament. What's been the difference at different clubs, if there is one?
Um, every coach you have is different, and they're all going to set up their sessions and plan out their weeks leading up to games differently. So it's just basically how can you stay consistent and adapt to this new style of coaching, whatever it may be. And as a goalkeeper, I think you're always evolving. I think as a footballer in general, you're always trying to evolve and trying to get a little bit more complexities inside your game. So it's just staying focused on what you do best as your base and just trying to expand as much as you can.
And I think one of the things that's like, I would say football has changed and evolved so much in the sports science side of it and the nutrition side of it and everything that goes alongside that. Football just came out leaps and bounds in the last 15, 20 years, in my personal opinion. And it is an opinion, but certainly for goalkeepers as well. If you looked at a goalkeeper 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you know, your Peter Schmeichels, your David Seamans and stuff like that, and you look at goalkeepers now, they almost have to be as comfortable with the ball at their feet as they are, you know, shot stopping. Have you noticed a change or a different dynamic throughout your career?
A million percent. I think, especially like as I was growing up, it wasn't really a big factor if your goalkeeper could play out of the back with his feet because you're just punting the ball long, trying to win second balls. But now because the development of the game, everybody wants to try and play out of tight spaces. You have to be that 11th guy on the field, or your team's at a massive disadvantage. So luckily for me, I grew up playing as a field player alongside as a goalkeeper. In high school, I played as a forward in the midfield, and I think that really helped me, stand out to pro scouts and kind of help my game. That's one of the stronger points of my game is my feet and playing out of the back. And it's an absolute prerequisite now as a goalkeeper. You have to be able to be consistent on the ball, and if not, you're just not going to get the opportunities as other guys.
I would absolutely agree with that. You know, you see, you know, so many times now the fullback will go to the keeper and the keeper will switch it to the other fullback, or even someone like Ederson, for example, who gets a couple of assists a season. You know, it's an incredible attribute, and like you said, it's that it almost like an extra man. You know,
Yeah.
when your keeper can play that way. Just to switch gears slightly, take me through a typical day in your life of a training day. So when you get up in the morning to having your breakfast to getting in and doing your stretching, give me a typical training day in your life, what it's like.
Yeah. So we actually just got our trainings back to our normal time, which is starting at 10. We were during the summer months, we start at 9 just to try to avoid the heat. But so now I'm up around 6:45, have a full glass of water. I'll have some breakfast, whether it's, sometimes a fried egg or some oatmeal or some berries. Nothing too heavy, but enough to feel full. And then have my cup of coffee on the drive into training. I'm getting into training about 2 hours before our start time. Get in the hot tub, warm my body up, and then I'm straight to the gym. Do about 45 minutes of stretching. Do like a light lift. If it's not a team, usually we'll do a team lift twice a week, or I'll just do something on my own, super light, just to keep my body activated. And then about 15 minutes before training, we'll go and do video. And then we head out straight to training. And then we got about 2 hours on the field. About 45 minutes of that is goalkeeper work specific. And then we'll go into some sort of shooting or possession drill with the team. And then some sort of bigger game, whether it's whatever we want to work out that week, whoever we're playing against. And then after training, I'm hitting a protein shake right after training, some water, gym again for probably 15-minute stretch, and then ice bath, or I'll do the recovery boots, and then I'm out.
So it's a long day, effectively. I think a lot of people think, the 2 hour training session, the video beforehand, that's kind of it. But when you start putting everything together, it's a long day of not only physical work, but mental work because you
I
probably
mean,
don't switch off.
a lot of you can make it a short day if you want,
Mhm,
but I think in the long term, it's going to catch up to you,
mhm,
and that's just what I've noticed. And I've always, ever since my first year in the league, I always say this. Zach Scott, I don't know if you know him.
mhm,
He is who I try to model myself after when it comes to being a pro.
mhm,
Every single day, this guy was eating right. He was staying outside, doing extra work after training, was over by himself. He was always just doing the right things, and I just try to keep him in mind whenever I'm getting unmotivated.
mhm,
So big shout out to Zach Scott.
mhm. Was there anyone else? You've mentioned Zach there, but was there any other motivators or mentors in your career that you would attribute anything to?
Um, being my first 2 years in the league, I got to train with Casey Keller. He was the number
Yeah.
one in Seattle when I was there. And so just being able to watch him, and especially as an older guy at the time, seeing how he approached training sessions and
Mhm,
just the professionalism he approached the game with
mhm,
really helped me figure out what my mentality would be going forward.
mhm. Well, hold that thought of mentality because we're going to come to that section in a little bit because it's something that fascinates me. But just before we go there, I want to know about you mentioned different teams you have to adapt in different coaches. What qualities in a coach brings out the best in you?
Honestly, somebody who's, for me, I deal with our goalkeeper coach the most. I don't really deal with
Mhm.
our head coach all too often.
Yeah.
So for me, as what I enjoy from a goalkeeper coach is somebody who's obviously knowledgeable,
Mhm,
but can push you
mhm,
at the right times.
mhm,
There's times where things aren't going well. Maybe you're not sticking balls that you should
mhm,
be, and you could start to get down on yourself and get pissed off.
mhm,
Where's the coach who understands when it's the right time to motivate you by getting on your ass
mhm,
and cursing you out,
mhm,
or when is it a time to put your arm around you and say, it's all right, next one, next one, next one.
mhm.
So for me, it's always been, I've had multiple coaches just screaming and yelling all the time, and it can get difficult, especially if you're not having a good day, if you're always being
Mhm.
put down. Things can go wrong real quick. But when you have a coach that's too light all the time and not serious enough, then I think that can drive you the other way just as much.
Yeah.
So just having a good balance with your coach and a good understanding.
And what's the best piece of advice you think you have probably ever received in your career, if you can even pick one piece of advice?
Wow. Um, Honestly, just when I'll come back to the consistency thing.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing I've learned. Honestly, is just you want to keep your hills and valleys. You don't want to have very big hills and very big valleys. Dips here and there in performance. You want to just stay as consistent as possible.
It's it's such a massive thing, consistency. And I think a lot of it comes from your mindset. And you talked about mindset, and we're coming on to the mindset section now. And this is my favorite section of the podcast because I love hearing what guys who and girls who operate at the elite level, how they think and what goes on, what cogs turn in the head. And big one for me is superstitions, rituals, and routines. Is there anything that you have to do that you must do pre-game or pre-training every time?
Honestly, every time, other than taping my fingers, the only thing that I have to do is just I take about 30 to 60 seconds to myself and just like be alone and just close my eyes and just try and foresee what today is going to be like and just foresee myself making the right saves, making the right decisions.
Mhm,
But beyond that, that's that's really it.
mhm. What
I
about
also hate when water bottles are standing up by themselves. I don't know why. That's my one pet peeve on the field.
you
I
have
don't
to
know
knock it down?
why. I have to knock them over. Yeah.
You practice your throwing.
Hmm.
It's like a bowling alley. Another thing I want to talk about is confidence. And you take that moment to yourself and you have that reflection or you even have that affirmation. Does that affect your confidence level going into a game, that comfort level?
Confidence. I don't think I would say just how comfortable I
Mhm,
am. I think it for me personally, that's what helps me kind of calm me down.
Mhm.
because going into a game or whatever it may be, you kind of jacked up. You got a lot of adrenaline going.
Mhm.
So for me, I need to be calmed down. I think a lot of goalkeepers are probably pretty crazy when it comes to that. So just keeping like it just calms me down and keeps my mind focused and level headed.
It's funny when you're said about goalkeepers having to get calmed down, being a little crazy sometimes. I always think back to when I was a kid. It was either the tallest guy or the craziest person was always the goalkeeper.
Absolutely.
um, speaking of other mindset attributes and other mindset questions, what is the biggest, what or maybe not the biggest, but what's the most important thing about having a strong mindset? Talk to me about how it affects your game, how it affects your confidence, not only your confidence, but maybe even your happiness level and the different things that couples all about that mindset.
You mentioned happiness level, and that's 100% for me. I feel like it just makes me happy.
Mhm.
And if I can just take that joy that I feel before training into the training session, it will raise my level 10%
Mhm.
easily. And just if you're happy with where you are in football, then you'll be happy in life. And if you're not happy in life, you can find that refuge in football as well.
Mhm.
So I think just keep myself happy in making sure I'm enjoying myself. And the day I don't enjoy it anymore will be the day I retire.
And has that always been the case for you from when you were a teenager, thinking about going pro and taking the steps up the ladder to going pro? Was it always about the joy and the happiness? You mentioned the love of the game. If I can scratch that surface a little bit, was the joy and the happiness always a key factor as well for you? Or was that something that came a bit later in your career once you began to appreciate what you do for a living?
No, that's kind of the why I made the decision to pursue soccer
Mhm.
rather than I played pretty much every sport growing up.
Yeah.
And I remember my father asking me, once we started having tournaments every other weekend, started having things pile on top of each other, he said, you're gonna have to pick one.
Mhm.
And he said, what makes you the happiest? What do you enjoy doing the most?
Mhm.
And it was the easiest question he's ever asked me, was playing soccer for sure. It's just from playing in the backyard with my friends to playing now with my friends still.
Mhm.
I haven't had a bad day yet.
That it's incredible, the joy, the importance of enjoying what you do, and that morale factor. High morale would obviously lead to good performance and that desire to get better
Yeah.
because you're always striving. You're happy with what you're doing, so you're pushing forward. When things do get hard for you, have things ever got to a point where you have been down, deflated, or let me put it this way: when you've had a really bad day and you can't sleep at night and the lights are off, you're staring at the roof. How do you overcome those feelings?
Yeah, I mean, I've had plenty of nights like that where you just feel like your level's not where it should be, or your game's not where it should be. And to be honest, just like having a good support group around me, my fiance, my friends, being able to lift me up and be able to talk to them is a major factor for me, and just helps me realize that it's not all about football. Football is what I do for my career, my life, but there's other things outside of football that I can also find enjoyment of, and that's just been massive for me as well.
What about like a team atmosphere? If you've a great group of lads together in the changing room, does that impact performance?
I think so. I want to say yes. I've had great locker rooms,
Mhm.
and we'd be not a great team,
Mhm.
but for the most part, I've had pretty much all great locker rooms. Maybe one or two locker rooms where they were a bit iffy and
Mhm.
guys off in the corners by themselves, or like little groups huddled here and there. Um, but like here in Nashville, our group is so tight knit, and there's not a single person who doesn't get along with another person,
Mhm.
and that really helps you on the field on game day when you have to count on this person
Mhm.
and rely on them to do their job so you can do yours. Is I don't think it's quantifiable how important that is to
And
have a group that enjoys being around each other.
and the thing is too, you mentioned about everyone doing their job, and football, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it becomes easier if everyone knows their role and does their job. And in terms of being a goalkeeper, I always find that you, as a goalkeeper, you must have a good relationship with your back four. That communication level must be there. That understanding must be there. Your centre backs need to know when you're coming for a ball. Your full backs need to know that you're on for, to drop the ball off and move forward up the pitch.
Yep.
How do you cultivate that relationship?
Honestly, it's tough. You just have to be in the trainings as much as possible. You see sometimes guys come into the league, and highly touted guys come into the league and struggle early on, and then develop and start to blow up again,
Mhm.
because you need time to develop that understanding with your, especially as a goalkeeper, with your back four, have an understanding what's my striker, or what's my center back's biggest strengths, what's his
Mhm.
weaknesses, how can I cover him, and
Mhm.
vice versa as well. He needs to learn about me just as much. So I think just time on the field together and just talking it out with each other is irreplaceable.
Mhm. And also with being a goalkeeper, I often feel that being a goalkeeper is probably the loneliest and the hardest position to play on a pitch. And the reason why that is a striker can maybe miss three or four chances and the game's still 0-0. If a fullback misses or gets caught by a winger and the ball comes in, the keeper either doesn't save it, makes a mistake, whatever it may be, all of a sudden you're a goal down. How do you how do you deal with that? Because that to me just there must be something uniquely different with a goalkeeper and their thought process and their pattern to overcome that. Because I find goalkeepers more than any other player are the players who get hung out to dry, so to speak.
Yeah, that's why they say to be a goalkeeper you have to be crazy or insane. That's that's the biggest reason. It's so difficult, but you have to have big shoulders. You have to have strong shoulders, and know that that's just part of the game. That you can have a striker miss 10 shots and score the game winner in the 89th minute, and he's man of the match. If you have a goalkeeper do the same thing, it's you're out, you're gone. So it's just being able to figure out the next play. If you make a mistake, make the next play as clean as possible, no matter what it is. The next time you touch the ball, be clean, be confident. You have to be able to, I heard Clint Dempsey say this on air the other night after the U.S. men's national team game. So you have to be like a goldfish. You have to forget about the mistakes you make and just move on to the next play.
And with that as well, being a goalkeeper and certain grounds, I'm not going to mention which grounds, there's some very passionate fans huddled behind the net.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes in the first half you get away from it because you're down in the other end where there's not as many people, and then the second half you're up against the passionate home support who will call you every name under the sun and try to distract you. Do you enjoy those moments, or is that something you're able to like mentally tone out? Is it like white noise? Talk to me about being in the cauldron of noise, so to speak.
I love it. I mean, it kind of just like first 5 minutes you're hearing it, and but after that it's just completely gone out of your head because of how focused you need to be on what's going on the pitch. The only thing I hate is when people start throwing things at you. I've had a game, I can't say where, but I've collected like $2 in quarters just from people throwing stuff at me. But I love it. That means you're in their head. That means they're worrying about you, and that's a good thing.
If they're throwing stuff at you, you're doing your job. They're not throwing
Yeah,
something at you if you've thrown in a couple of goals.
exactly. You want
um,
them to be pissed off at you.
Absolutely, and even like bringing it a little bit closer to home is when your friends and family are in the stadium. Does that inspire you in terms of your performance?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't.
No.
I don't even register it, to be honest. If it did, I don't think I'd be doing my job the other times well enough.
Yeah. It's interesting because you can see that professionalism. You come in, you know your job, you know your role, and you do it to the best of your ability, irrespective of whether you could be in the new camp in Barcelona or whether you're at training, every day.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, and you must have that as a goalkeeper. What other attributes are necessary to succeed as not only a professional player, but a goalkeeper specifically?
Oh man, there's a lot. Honestly, fearlessness is
Hmm.
is a big one. You have you have to be willing to throw your body in a pile of 10 people and come out with the ball.
Hmm.
Um, that, and I'd say honestly, that's the biggest one.
Yeah.
Just being able to be fearless and having a short-term memory,
Hmm.
because you're gonna make mistakes. Everybody's gonna make a mistake.
Hmm.
It's just how do you not compound those mistakes and make another one?
Mhm.
How can you learn in such a short period of time? And like I said, you have to be able to make that next play as clean as possible in order to help yourself erase that memory and erase that whatever happened in the past. You just have to, at a coach, you have to crumple up that piece of paper and just throw it behind you and say, you just move on.
Yeah, phenomenal advice. And I think for young people listening to this who want to go pro, who are looking to go professional, or whether they just be a fan who's listening to this and wondering, oh, to get inside the mind of a professional player, specifically for those young players who want to go pro, and for anyone that's listening to this that has a desire to make it, at the elite level, if you could give them one piece of advice, we've talked about consistency, we've talked about dedication. Is there anything else you would add to that for a young person?
Don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop. It's not everybody's journey is the same. A lot of people have a lot more winding roads in their way to their goals. And you can't get distracted by the people who maybe have it easy or have a more straight path to it.
Yeah.
Just don't stop working your butt off. I know so many guys who didn't get drafted out of college or didn't make it onto a trial out of college, and you keep working, and eventually someone's going to see something in you if you keep getting better.
Mhm.
And I think the right mentality can go a long way. I'd rather have a guy who's going to work his ass off for 90 minutes and just grind it out rather than a guy who's really good but maybe takes plays off. So I think just keep going. That's it.
That work rate, that dedication, the consistency, the desire to learn, the desire to improve. It's
Because
also,
if you want it bad enough, show somebody.
yeah, absolutely. And there's plenty of options. You've got the colleges, you've got the ASL, you've got the MLS. There's so many opportunities here for players, especially in the US and even up here in Canada. Something that's a bit unique to you and maybe some other goalkeepers. You've played for several different clubs. You've played for the San Jose Earthquakes, you've played for the Whitecaps, you've played for Nashville. What's it like for a goalkeeper and for someone who's moving clubs? Give us a bit of an insight to switching clubs, switching teams, what's going through your mind, your expectation level.
Man, it's hard, especially when you get kind of towards your career. It's not something you want to get used to doing or get comfortable doing, because you always want to be able to try and stay with. If you enjoy your club, you want to be able to stay there as long as possible. And for me, it wasn't always an opportunity or an option. But I mean, you just have to be able to adapt as quickly as possible. Get in with your new teammates before preseason starts. Get to the city as early as you can to start developing a relationship with those new players that you're going to have to be playing with. And the quicker you can develop a good relationship with your teammates and your coaches, the easier the transition is.
And obviously that connection is so important because that's what builds the morale. That's what builds the happiness. You get used to this city, you get used to the environment, you know where things are, and it's not all rushing about and figuring things out, so to speak. Um, just to move on slightly, whenever you're getting ready for a game, whenever it's game day and you're getting to the arena, getting to the stadium, what happens on game day? What happens in the changing room in your preparation to go out and play?
Honestly, everybody's preparation is different. Mine doesn't really change all that much. I'm in pretty early before kickoff, getting in the hot tub, just doing as much stretching as I can, and just making sure I have the right playlist going so I can help myself, get focused. And I just spend that time trying to get as focused as possible and getting everything that's in my mind kind of out of the way, just clearing everything out.
And obviously, you're at Nashville right now. What's your goals for the season and what's your goals for the years that lie ahead? Is there any desire to move into some sort of coaching role, goalkeeping coaching? What do you see in your future?
I hate talking about retirement. I hate it. But I'm 32 now, so I'm getting a little older. I've always had, I think, like an eye for goalkeeping, and that's for right now. I think that's something I really want to get into. Being a goalkeeper coach.
Mhm.
I don't really have much of a desire to be a head coach.
Mhm.
That's beyond me.
Mhm.
But a goalkeeper coach is what I'm looking to do once I figure out when I'm going to be done playing,
Mhm.
whenever that may be. Hopefully not too soon.
Absolutely. Hopefully not too soon whatsoever. For this season with Nashville, what's the goals as this season draws to a close?
MLS Cup every year. It's the same goal: MLS Cup or bust.
Yeah.
I think we've put ourselves so far. We have 6 games left, and we're sitting in second place. So we have, as of now, home field advantage up until the conference final. So I mean, with the talent we have on our team and the structure we have around us with our coaching staff and everything that goes into it, I don't see any reason why we can't win the MLS Cup.
That's the thing is you have to aim high. And you talked earlier about the hard work and the dedication and the focus and the consistency, the goal chasing, and the goal has to be to win the MLS Cup.
Yeah.
Have you always been a person who has set goals and they are the ultimate goal, win the trophy?
Some growing up, or like when I was in my younger days, I don't think I really gave a whole lot of thought to. I know I had goals, but I didn't really set goals for what's my goals this week, what's my goals this month, what's the goal
Yeah.
this year. I've gotten a little bit more structured in how I set my goals for myself. And I think it makes a huge difference because you have a goal you set, there's something you're striving for, whether it's MLS Cup for the whole year. That's our goal for the season. But what's my goal for this game? What's my goal for this week of training? And I think that helps your mentality as well.
Mhm.
Being able to strive for a goal, whatever that may be, helps you push through those physical pain barriers when you're in the midst of training, when you're doing fitness, whatever it may be.
You mentioned pain barriers there. If you do get a little bit of a knock, if you are pulling up a little bit injured, how do you recover? What's your quickest way? We've talked about after training, you're always stretching. Sometimes you do the boots, sometimes you go to the ice bath, whatever. But what are maybe your sort of three key points, I suppose, to injury prevention? What do you do to prevent injury, and what do you do when you do feel a little bit of a knock? How do you overcome that and get back to full fitness as soon as possible?
Yeah,
Obviously, provided the injury isn't overly severe.
when you're picking up little injuries here and there, you have to have a good relationship with your training staff. You have to be able to trust them. And, everywhere I've been able to have a great training staff and plenty of great people to talk to. And they'll give you a plan of how to get you back on the field or get you back to feeling 100% as soon as possible, whether that's, getting massages on wherever your injury may be, or getting in the gym and doing specific, just like I've had a shoulder issue years ago where you get in the gym, you're doing your routine, and you just add 10 minutes to do different types of exercises, and now that's just part of my everyday routine, in order, because as a goalkeeper you're diving on your shoulders all the time, so keeping them strong and stretched out is very important. So those types of things, just getting into a routine and being able to change your routine into adding different aspects of it.
That is the thing with a goalkeeper as well, because when you're doing training, you're diving to save a ball with your hands. Then the very next moment, you're almost expected to spread across the goal and save one with your feet. And you're just constantly every day, the training and the intensity of that training and probably the ground and pound on your body, because it probably isn't easy on your body. And
Sure.
and now your nutrition plays a key role, probably even your sleep pattern plays a role, injury prevention, the stretching plays a role, the therapy plays a role, and it all beds in really, really nicely. But it's an incredibly difficult but fun journey, I think. Look from the outside looking in. How would you describe your journey as we begin to wrap this up so far in your career as a goalkeeper?
I mean, you hit on it. There's plenty of difficulties, especially for me. I didn't when I first started playing professionally, I had certain goals for myself that I haven't personally hit, and it's I've been a backup goalkeeper for the majority of my career, and I'd argue that's one of the hardest positions to be able to do, because you have to take your ego out of things every once in a while, and if you let your ego get in your way, I think it can really hinder uh, your performances. And so I had to learn how to have confidence in myself, but not have such an ego where I should be playing here or I should be getting this opportunity. All things will come in good time, and as long as I can be as professional as possible, I'm happy. I'm good. I'm not really worried about it.
But that's the thing, is that professionalism, you're dedicated, you're disciplined, you have your routine, you work on your stretching pre and post practices, you're working on injury prevention, you're working on your mindset constantly, your match fit performance, you're trying to stay ready, and you're literally, that's the word, isn't it? Ready. You're ready
Yeah.
to go when called upon.
Yep.
As we close off the podcast, and I want to thank you for your time. Where can people connect with you on social media to continue to follow your journey and see what you're up to?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Bryan Meredith 35. I don't post a whole lot. Big. I'm not an influencer, if you will. But yeah, I mean, I stick to myself, man. I'm boring.
You're boring, but you're dedicated to your craft. And if I can word it that way,
Being a
that's a bit of a
professional
joke.
athlete is boring. Nobody knows that, but it's boring.
But it's important, to have that focus and that drive and that determination to
Yeah.
ultimately succeed in this sport. But you mentioned the goal this season is the MLS Cup. I want to wish you well for that. I want to encourage all our listeners to check you out, social media, give it a follow, give your accounts a follow, see what you're up to, drop you a DM if anything in this podcast stuck out, helped
Yeah, reach
people.
out. I'm
It was,
available.
but Bryan, thank you so much for giving me your time today. Guys, I'm Darren Potts. This was the Matchfit podcast at Matchfit Football, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Bryan Meredith, you've been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you.